Welcome, birders. This is Ed Pullen, your host at the Banter podcast, where birders talk birding. This is my second one-take recording episode from Morocco. I'm sitting in my room with Bruce Labar, my roommate, and he's putting up with me recording this, so hopefully that won't be too obnoxious. I want to first apologize for in episode 1 calling Michael Carmody, our tour leader for the trip, but Michael Legacy. He's Legacy Tours, not Michael Legacy. I guess he has a legacy, but that's not his name. We just finished day 2 of the Legacy Tours Morocco trip. We had a great day today, and I'm going to start talking about yesterday. We left the Hotel Toubkal about 7 in the morning and headed towards Rabat, which is north up the coast. It's the capital of Morocco, and we kind of drove really past that. But we stopped at a few places on the way. The first was a roadside marsh where we just got our first introduction to a lot of the shorebirds of this area. We saw collared pratincoll for the first time. That's a cool bird that hunts in the air and is sort of like a shorebird and sort of like a swallow and sort of like a mix of a bunch of things. We saw red-crested pochard. We saw both redshanks, spotted and common. Spotted was a life bird for almost everyone on the trip, and especially Bruce and I liked that. We saw curlew sandpipers in almost full breeding plumage with their brick red bellies, right next to Dunlin with their black bellies, and Dunlin are a little smaller. That was cool. We got a really nice look at one Mediterranean gull, which is a black-headed gull, mixed in with a whole bunch of black-headed gulls. That's their real name, black-headed gulls. And it had a red bill and a little partial eye ring. It was really cool. And had 30 species at that one stop, so that was pretty cool. Made several stops on the way north. One of them was at a sewer pond by a McDonald's, and can't go on a birding trip without an STP. And saw African blue tit, a recently split species from blue tit in the rest of Europe, and lesser kestrel. Today in the van ride, Marcus Ronig, one of the friends from Tacoma, who's also on the trip, told us the story of seeing lesser kestrel near the Seville Cathedral in Spain. He was trying to decide if it was a common kestrel or a lesser kestrel, and he looked it up in the Collins Guide, and right there on the page, right beside the picture of the kestrel, is a picture of the Seville Cathedral. Turns out the lesser kestrel nests right in the windows and cavities on the cathedral and is a colonial nester there, so that helped him figure out that it was a lesser kestrel. We went to a place called Oud Sharat. I'm sure I butchered that name, but Oud, O-U-E-D, is the I think native language, Arabic name for river. And we walked down past a river through some sheep pastures and saw lots of crested larks. Saw Kentish plovers down there. They're a little plover with a partial neck ring, and they were behaving a lot like killdeer do, except they would, to lure you away from their young or their nest, they would drag their tail on the ground and run along in a sort of funny fashion that was pretty entertaining. We also saw little ringed and common ringed plovers, a Eurasian oyster catcher, over 60 collared pratincolls that were just overhead all throughout the time we were there. Saw 2 shrikes, great gray shrike that was recently split from our northern shrike and another shrike in Europe, and saw woodchat shrike. Saw a little owl, which is a lot like our burrowing owl. They're pretty common here. We made another stop at a place called Sidi Bougaba Lake. That was our last stop of the day. And it's a regional park where we saw white-headed ducks. They're a really gorgeous duck that's sort of like our ruddy duck, but even a more outrageous blue bill with a big lump on it. It's just really cool. Saw the highlight of the trip for our guide, Mohamed. He saw 2 Muscovy ducks. Somehow they must have been transported over from Mexico and were on the lake there. And we're not sure if they were the first 2 Muscovy ducks seen in Morocco or the first 2 he'd seen in Morocco, but whatever it was, he's been pretty excited the whole trip about getting Muscovy duck for his list. So we have all gotten a good chuckle about that. Michael, the tour leader here, is a really big Mexico birder, leads lots of tours there, and so Muscovy duck is right down his alley. So he got a real thrill out of showing Mohamed Muscovy ducks. We had a nice dinner and got a good night's sleep, unlike the night before when I didn't sleep so well, and today I felt much better. So today we had another good day. A lot of driving today, but a good day. We drove into some upland habitat in the morning to try for some migrant and local species. Took a walk during some showers, a little bit of rain, into some fields near a wet area. Got really nice looks at some passerine birds. Corn bunting, they seem to be everywhere. We got really good looks at them and heard them frequently. They sound, Marcus and I thought they sound a little bit like a savanna sparrow with a little extra stuff going on. We saw a female Cyril bunting. We're hoping to see a male. Got really good looks at common cuckoos. Heard them calling. They say cuckoo. I mean, just like their name. And we saw at least 3 of those. We got a little glimpse of a Eurasian hoopoe and a really nice long flyover of a booted eagle. So that's our first eagle of the trip. Then from there we went to a forested area to look for a double-spurred francolin. Heather and Mohamed got a brief look at those, and we all heard them, but they're pretty tough to see. They stick to the brush. From there, we took a long time to try to get a look at a common nightingale. It was singing, at least 3 of them, singing like crazy. And the most any of us except Michael, our guide, got a look was at a bird flying through the bushes. We never really got much of a glimpse of that. We're hoping for that later, and a lot of us have seen it elsewhere. But we had a really nice walk around there and had a good time. Stopped at lunch. Lunch was a little bit of an experience. In Morocco, I don't think a lot of people go out to lunch, so it was hard to find a place that was interested in serving lunch to 12 people. And on this trip, we're pretty much stopping for lunch somewhere rather than just eating a picnic on the way. And so we had to try a few places. We finally found a roadside stop that actually was just perfect. People had sandwiches. I had some bread and mustard. It worked out fine for my vegan diet. And anyway, that lunch worked out fine, but it was a little bit of a stressful situation for a guide, and Mohammed was trying to find the place. But it all worked out. And then in the afternoon, our real target was a special owl that's sort of like our short-eared owl. It's called a marsh owl. It's darker than our short-eared owl. It's a really beautiful bird. But Mohammed had it all staked out at a place where the local farmers' kids knew where it was. And we went there. It was a little bit of a walk, maybe a mile or a little more, through some agricultural areas to find it. And we walked on in, and it wasn't in the place he thought it would be. It turns out that some Spanish birders had been there earlier in the day and had flushed it from the spot it was usually at, but not to fear. Mohammed talked to the farmers' kids, and they knew right where to go, and they walked out in the field and flushed it for us. We got really good looks, and I think I got some pretty good pictures. I'll put those on birdbanter.com, the website, and you can see those. And that was a cool bird. And even Michael Carmody, our guide, that was a lifer for him. So he was really excited that he got not just a first Morocco bird, but a lifer for him, and he's traveled a lot, so that's pretty cool. We saw a harrier in the distance while we were there called Montague's harrier. It's a real pale harrier with dark wingtips and lacks the white rump of a hen harrier, so that's how everybody figured that's what it was. And then we headed home. We were going to stop at some wetlands on the way home, but there's been a 2-year drought here in Morocco, and it's just been very dry, and the wet areas we're hoping to look for had dried up, and it really didn't bother me a whole lot that we got home by 6 because I was starting to fade by then. Had a nice vegetable tagine for dinner and sat with Mohammed for dinner and had a great talk. It was really cool to hear at least a little bit of his story. He's become a certified guide in this country. He's pretty well known and is quite a good birder. So he's been fun to be around. And that wraps up the first 2-day report from the Morocco trip. From the Bird Banter podcast. Good birding. Good day.